Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a really interesting story out of North Texas, the Fairview Texas Temple Project.
Yeah, it's quite the journey this one's been on. Not your typical development story for Latter-day Saint Temple.
Definitely not. And we've got some good source material, local news, town records that paint a pretty detailed picture of the whole thing, the controversies and compromises.
Exactly. And it helps to remember the background here. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has grown quite a bit in Texas. We're talking nearly 400,000 members now.
Right, up from about 370,000 not too long ago. So when they first announced a temple for the Prosper area back in October 2022, it seemed, well, pretty straightforward.
It did, but then things shifted. By December 2023, the location changed to Fairview, specifically this 8.16-acre spot on Stacey Road, right next to an existing church meeting house.
And initially, it wasn't even called the Fairview Temple, was it?
No, the first name announced was the McKinney, Texas Temple. And the initial plans were pretty ambitious, a multi-story building, around 44,000 square feet. That size, well, that immediately set the stage for some friction in Fairview.
Because Fairview has a very specific character they want to maintain, right? More rural, lower density.
Precisely. So this large multi-story proposal with a tall spire and significant lighting, it really clashed with the local zoning and just the overall feel of the town. That became the core issue.
Let's talk about that initial design. How big are we actually talking?
Well, the first proposal had a spire reaching about 174 feet. The main building itself was planned to be around 65 feet tall.
65 feet, compared to what local zoning usually allows.
Yeah, the residential limit there is 35 feet, so you
Yeah.
can see the problem. Almost double the height, plus the spire towering over everything. There was a rendering released in early 2024 that really highlighted that scale difference.
Okay, so that was the plan that caused the pushback. What did they finally agree on?
Big changes. The approved design is now single-story, much smaller at just under 30,800 square feet, 30,742 to be exact.
Wow, quite a reduction.
Huge.
Yeah.
And the spire height is capped at 120 feet, with the main building facade at just under 45 feet, 44 feet 7 inches technically. Still taller than the base zoning, but much closer.
Still using those classic temple materials, though, white stone, art glass.
Yes, the aesthetic plan for materials seems consistent, focusing on that white stone and decorative glass look common to many temples.
So diving into the community reaction, what were the main worries beyond just the size? You mentioned lighting.
Yeah, the height and scale were definitely number one. The mayor, Mayor Lessner, I believe, called it grossly out of proportion. But residents were also really concerned about light pollution impacting the area's dark night skies, which is something Fairview values.
And preserving that community character we mentioned.
Exactly. There was a group, Fairview United, that organized opposition, even got like over 860 signatures on a petition specifically against the height of that first plan.
And the town officials listened.
They did. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denying the initial proposal in May 2024. Then, in August, the town council voted unanimously to deny it, specifically citing the need to stick to the town's established ordinances.
So a firm no at first, but obviously that wasn't the end of it.
Right. Things moved towards finding some middle ground. There was non-binding mediation in November 2024, and that seems to be where the breakthrough happened, leading to a sort of tentative agreement on a smaller scale.
Was it smooth sailing after that?
Not entirely. Reports suggest there was some renewed tension later, maybe some disagreements over further concessions the town might have been seeking. Even mentions of potential legal action briefly surfaced.
But they worked through it.
Apparently so. The final approval came on April 29, 2025. The town council voted 5-2 to approve the revised, smaller plan.
And that approval came with specific strings attached, right?
Absolutely. Clear conditions, the max square footage, the spire capped at 120 feet, the facade height limit just under 45 feet, and really strict rules about the lighting. It has to be off between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m.
And the name change.
Yes, that was another condition. It had to be officially named the Fairview Texas Temple. The church actually announced that name change on April 28th, just after the P&Z Commission recommended approval of the revised plan and right before the final town council vote.
Okay, for listeners maybe less familiar, could you briefly explain why temples are so important in the Latter-day Saint faith? They're different from the regular chapels, correct?
Yeah, very different. Temples are considered literally houses of the Lord. They aren't for regular Sunday worship like the meeting houses or chapels. Temples are actually closed on Sundays.
So what happens inside?
They're dedicated for sacred ordinances, special ceremonies and promises or covenants that members believe are essential for salvation and eternal families. things like endowments and ceilings for both the living and on behalf of those who have passed away.
And access is different too.
Right. While the temple grounds are usually open for anyone to walk around and enjoy, going inside after it's dedicated requires being a member in good standing, holding what's called a temple recommend. There is usually a public open house before the dedication, where anyone can tour the interior.
Got it. So looking back at this whole Fairview saga, what's the big picture here, the main takeaway for you?
Well, I think it's a really clear example of the complexities that pop up when, a growing religious institution's plans meet a local community's specific values and regulations. It shows that push and pull.
And the potential for compromise, eventually.
Definitely. It highlights that negotiation and finding middle ground is possible, even when the starting points seem really far apart.
So where does the project stand right now?
It's basically in the final planning and pre-construction phase. They haven't announced a groundbreaking date yet, but the approval is in place.
And who will this temple serve primarily?
It's anticipated to serve members from several surrounding areas, the stakes, which are like dioceses, in Allen, Briscoe, McKinney, Prosper, and Sherman, Texas.
Okay, great overview. So as we wrap up, maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Yeah, maybe think about how this specific story in Fairview reflects broader questions. How do our communities navigate these intersections of growth, tradition, regulation, and differing visions for the future? What does finding that balance really look like on the ground?